This is ASMR News. Drift off, wake up, or simply relax with the world's biggest headlines. Today we'll have special guest Lemira casting the Animals and Environment section of the news. You can check out her Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Lemira, Lemera, where she streams live ASMR regularly. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump have both tested positive for COVID-19. In addition, Presidential Counselor Hope Hicks has also tested positive. Other government leaders who have tested positive are UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. Trump has come under criticism for his handling of the coronavirus pandemic in the US, where more than 7.3 million have been infected and 208,000 have died. He routinely held campaign events where supporters were densely packed together, with many not wearing masks. President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden clashed in one of the most chaotic and bitter White House debates in years on Tuesday evening. Trump frequently interrupted, prompting Mr. Biden to tell him to shut up as the two fought over the pandemic, healthcare, and the economy. The U.S. president was challenged over white supremacist support and refused to condemn a specific far-right group. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin were unable to agree on a new coronavirus stimulus package on Wednesday. House Democrats initially aimed to pass their roughly $2.2 trillion rescue legislation Wednesday night, but called off the vote until at least Thursday to allow more time for bipartisan talks. However, approving the bill would be largely symbolic, as Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is opposed. The EU launched legal action against the UK over its plan to breach a Brexit withdrawal agreement signed by both sides last year. The statement said the UK's controversial internal market bill would flagrantly violate the rules governing the border between the Irish Republic and Northern Ireland, a key stumbling block in Brexit talks for the last 4 years. A major hospital chain, United Health Services, with more than 400 locations, has been hit by what appears to be one of the largest medical cyber attacks in U.S. history. Computer systems at the chain began to fail over the weekend, and some locations had to file patient information with pen and paper. Ransomware is a type of malicious software that spreads across computer networks, encrypting files and demanding payment for a key to decrypt them. It's become a common tactic for hackers, although attacks of this scale against medical facilities aren't common. A patient died after a similar attack at a German hospital, which required her to be moved to a different hospital. In Las Vegas, private student and employee information was released online after the county school district refused to pay a hacker ransom. Reportedly, the hacker posted a warning on September 14th by uploading stolen files to a hacking website. The files included employee social security numbers and retirement paperwork, and student birth dates, addresses, and grades. The FBI does not recommend paying ransom for data breaches, saying that the payment told its hackers to target other organizations. More than 100 deaths have been reported in the heaviest fighting in years between Azerbaijan and Armenia over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. It is unclear what caused the renewed fighting, which is the heaviest since the 1994 ceasefire, and there are growing fears international powers could be dragged into the conflict. Officially, the province is part of Azerbaijan, but it is governed by ethnic Armenians. The two former Soviet republics fought a war in 1998 to 1994 over the territory. Azerbaijan's president has vowed to fight on until Armenian forces leave disputed territory on the fourth day of fierce fighting in the region. On Tuesday, Armenia's defense ministry released a picture of an Armenian Su-25 jet it said had been shot down by a Turkish F-16 on Tuesday. Turkey has rejected the allegation as cheap propaganda, and Azerbaijan says Armenia is lying about the cause. In response, French President Emmanuel Macron said he was extremely concerned by the warlike messages coming from Turkey, a staunch ally of Azerbaijan. Japan's defense ministry requested an 8.3% budget increase in 2020, its largest rise in more than 2 decades, in the face of China's rapid military modernization and a looming threat from North Korea. The defense ministry requested the increase to help the country's military build its capacity to respond to new threats, including cyber, space, and electromagnetic warfare. Japan's parliament must approve the budget later this year. The requested budget increase, while large, was in line with similar military expenditure in other parts of East Asia, including China, South Korea, and Taiwan. Amnesty International will halt its operation in India, citing reprisals from the government and the freezing of its bank accounts by Indian authorities. It said in a statement that the authorities' actions were the latest in the incessant witch hunt of human rights organizations by India's government over unfounded and motivated allegations, and that the group's lawful fundraising model was being portrayed as money laundering because it has challenged the government's grave inactions and excesses. Two women have died of severe injuries in India after being allegedly gang raped, prompting nationwide outrage and growing protests. Both women from the northern state of Uttar Pradesh were Dalits, the lowest ranked in India's caste-based hierarchy, who were referred to as untouchables in the past. The family of one of the women who died has accused police officials of cremating her body without their permission. After she was declared dead in a Delhi hospital, her body was brought to her village, and the victim's brother said that police officials pressured the family to cremate her immediately. When we refused, they took the body in an ambulance and cremated her, a family member said. The far-right political party Alternative for Germany, or AfD, fired Christian Lund, its spokesman, after a video was aired on TV where he discussed the gassing or shooting of migrants. He said, "We could kill migrants by shooting them. That's not even an issue," according to the video. "Or we could gas them, whatever you want, I don't care." AfD won third place in national elections in 2017, becoming the first far-right party to enter the Bundestag since the 1960s. But the pandemic has seen voters rally around traditional parties, with AfD slumping to single figures in local opinion polls. Cardinal George Pell returned to Rome 6 months after his acquittal on child sex abuse charges and release from prison in his native Australia. In 2018, he became the most senior Catholic official to be convicted of child sex abuse. He served 13 months in prison before Australia's High Court acquitted him in April of charges involving 2 choir boys in the late 1990s when he was Archbishop of Melbourne. Pell served at the Vatican from 2014 to 2019 as Minister of Economy, in charge of Pope Francis's financial reforms. Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmad al-Sabah, the ruler of Kuwait, has died at 91. He will be succeeded by his brother, Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf al-Ahmad al-Sabah, who is 83. Kuwait is home to some of the world's largest oil reserves. Following an increase in the number of attacks on U.S. interests, the U.S. has told Iraq's leaders that it plans to close its embassy in Baghdad unless the government stops Shiite militias from targeting diplomatic missions in Iraq. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo delivered the warning in recent phone calls to Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi and the Iraqi President Barham Salih. A withdrawal from the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad would be seen as a triumph by Iran and by pro-Iranian groups in Iraq, which have long called for the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Iraq. The brother of the South Korean fisheries official killed by North Korean soldiers last week rejected the government's claim that the man wanted to defect. The Coast Guard said it had determined, after an investigation based on CCTV footage, military intelligence, and background records, that Lee told the North Korean troops he wished to defect, and they were aware of his detailed personal information. Reportedly, the official had run up a debt of 330 million won, around $282,000 US, mostly from gambling. Colombian fishermen rescued 94 Haitian immigrants who were adrift in a motorboat in the Caribbean. Thousands of Haitians try to reach the United States via Colombia and Central America each year. Colombian migration authorities say that they have deported 3,000 Haitians so far in 2020. In addition, hundreds of Hondurans, mostly young men and women carrying backpacks and small children, formed a caravan headed towards the United States as the coronavirus has killed over 2,000 people and paralyzed the economy. Timothy Ray Brown, the first person cured of HIV, has died from cancer. Brown was given a bone marrow transplant from a donor who was naturally resistant to HIV in 2007, meaning he no longer needed antiviral drugs, and he remained free of the virus, which can lead to AIDS, for the rest of his life. His treatment involved destroying his bone marrow, which was producing the cancerous cells, and then having a bone marrow transplant. The transfer came from a donor that had a rare mutation in part of their DNA. Elon Musk, who tweeted in April that stay-at-home orders were de facto house arrest, is again downplaying the risks of COVID-19. He said he would not take a COVID-19 vaccine when one becomes available, and declined to say whether he feels a duty to pay employees who want to stay home to avoid contracting the virus. Musk, the third richest person in the world, has long cultivated a public persona of an eccentric entrepreneur who knows better than the experts and isn't afraid to offer controversial opinions. Hundreds of millions of people in China are expected to pack highways, trains, and planes for the National Day holiday on October 1st, one of the busiest times for travel in the world's most populous country. The 8-day break is China's first major holiday since it emerged from the coronavirus outbreak last spring, and will be an ambitious test of China's success in taming the virus, as well as a much-awaited boost to its economic recovery. Last year, 800 million domestic trips were made during the holiday, generating nearly 650 billion yuan, or $95 billion of tourism revenue. An Oregon man died when he fell about 100 feet into the ocean. Stephen Gastelum, 43, was attempting to get a photo in Oswald West State Park when he climbed a tree on the other side of a barrier that warns visitors to stay away from the edge of a cliff. Two women have accused Nikola founder Trevor Milton of sexual abuse when they were both 15 years old. The accusations go back 15 years and arose after a stock market research firm alleged fraudulent activities in Nikola's financial filings, which the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Department of Justice are now investigating. The investigations, in turn, prompted shareholder lawsuits against the firm, which has announced, but not yet manufactured, electric-powered trucks. An Australian man who punched and stomped on a pregnant woman in a suspected Islamophobic attack has been jailed for 3 years. The woman, who was 38 weeks pregnant, had been with friends in a cafe when the man entered and approached their table asking for money. When she refused, he launched into a vicious assault fueled by religious prejudice, yelling, "You Muslims wrecked my mum," before leaning over and punching the woman to the ground. He struck her at least 14 times and stomped on the back of her head before other customers managed to pull him away. Former chairman Rupert Stadler of Audi AG will become the first top executive to stand trial over Germany's Dieselgate scandal, which rocked the car industry in 2015. He is accused of knowingly selling cars which had manipulated engine software and did not comply with environmental standards. Audi's owner Volkswagen has admitted to installing software that was capable of cheating emissions tests in 11 million diesel vehicles worldwide. When U.S. regulators uncovered the scam in 2015, VW initially claimed it was the work of a handful of engineers and that no senior managers were involved. Not a single top executive has been convicted over the scandal in Germany. Polish leaders projected suggestions that LGBTQ people are deprived of any of their rights in the country after an open letter from 50 ambassadors and international representatives cited a need to work for non-discrimination, tolerance, and mutual acceptance. Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said he agreed that every person deserves respect, but that he completely disagreed with the ambassador's claim that LGBTQ people were being deprived of that. Some of Poland's leaders have cast the movement for civil rights for LGBTQ people as a threat to traditional families. President Andrzej Duda won a second term this summer after calling LGBTQ rights and ideology more dangerous than communism. In addition, several towns in eastern and western Poland have passed resolutions declaring themselves to be free from LGBTQ ideology. The coronavirus pandemic could lead to a spike in child marriages globally, reversing 25 years of progress on ending the practice, a charity warned. Save the Children said COVID-19 had put 2.5 million more girls at risk of early marriage by 2025. The pandemic is increasing poverty, forcing girls out of school and into work or marriage, the charity said. Around 12 million girls are victims of early marriage every year, the charity says, and girls in parts of South Asia, Africa, and Latin America are most vulnerable. But its reports find that the number is expected to rise markedly over the next 5 years as the economic consequences of the pandemic take their toll. Victoire Tomega Dogbe, 60, became the first female Prime Minister of Togo, a West African nation of about 8 million people. Dogbe, whose appointment was confirmed by President Faure Gnassingbé on Monday, replaces Komi Salom Klasu, who resigned as Prime Minister on Friday, a position he held since 2015. Prior to joining politics, she worked with the United Nations Development Program, the UNDP, according to information from the agency. Australia's Dreamworld theme park has been fined 3.6 million Australian dollars, around 2.5 million US dollars, for a 2016 accident that killed 4 people. The accident happened when a raft on one of the park's rides flipped over, throwing some of the passengers onto the conveyor belt and into the ride's machinery. An investigation in 2018 found the tragedy could have been averted had an emergency stop button been pressed that would have immediately stopped the ride, but staff were advised to rely first on a slower 7-second button. A persistent air leak on the International Space Station appeared to grow on Monday, causing NASA to awaken the astronauts during the night. Crew members have been hunting for the source over several weeks. However, there was an erroneous instrument reading that turned out to have been caused by a temperature change on board the ISS. NASA said that the leak posed no immediate danger to the crew and will only cause a slight deviation to the crew's ongoing work schedule. A French fighter that created a sonic boom caused a pause in a match at the French Open and startled Parisians when it rushed to aid 2 commercial aircraft which had lost radio contact. The loud noise shook windows around the city and suburbs of Paris and caused alarm to residents. A sonic boom is the noise linked to shock waves created when an object travels through air faster than the speed of sound. It can sound similar to explosions or thunder. Parisians have been on edge since last week's knife attack near Charlie Hebdo. French police quickly urged residents fearful of an explosion not to call emergency services. The Air Force said the Rafale, carrying out an intervention to assist an aircraft that had lost contact, was authorized to break the sound barrier to reach the aircraft in difficulty. Communication with both aircraft was restored shortly after the boom. Romanian villagers re-elected a dead man as their mayor by a landslide. Ion Alaman, who died 2 weeks ago from COVID-19 complications, won his third term as mayor of Devesilu, a village of 3,000 with 64% of the vote. Villagers said he had done a good job and deserved his posthumous victory. Pinterest is the leading gainer among social media stocks this year. Its stock is up nearly 125%, outpacing Facebook's 25% gain and the 40% and 60% jumps for Twitter and Snap. And next we have Lemira with animals and the environment.
Scientists suspect a bacterial disease called hemorrhagic septicemia caused the recent deaths of more than 30 elephants in Zimbabwe. The elephant deaths, which began in late August, come soon after hundreds of elephants died in neighboring Botswana in mysterious circumstances. Botswana and Zimbabwe are home to roughly half Africa's 400,000 elephants. Five parrots have been removed from public view after launching expletives at visitors and staff just days after being donated to Lincolnshire Wildlife Park in eastern England. The African great parrots, named Eric, Jade, Elsie, Tyson, and Billy, were given to the park from 5 different owners within the same week and shared a quarantining facility together before being placed on display. But the staff immediately noticed the birds' language. They literally, within a very short period of time, started swearing at each other, said a spokesman. Fuck off is the most common one, but the birds would utter anything you could think of. Most customers enjoyed the talent once the parrots were displayed. The visitors were giving them as much back as what they were giving to them, but the staff decided to separate them out of concern for children. France will gradually ban the use of wild animals in traveling circuses, farming minks, and keeping dolphins and orcas in captivity in marine parks. The rules would not apply to zoos and other permanent attractions or shows. Ecology Minister Barbara Pompili did not present a precise timetable for the changes, but said they would be implemented in the years to come. An enzyme that eats plastic could help solve the pollution crisis. Unlike natural degradation, which can take hundreds of years, the super enzyme can convert plastic back to its original materials or building blocks in just a few days. The process would allow plastics to be reused multiple times and thus reducing the reliance on fossil fuels resources, he added. For the chemists, the process involves mixing pitase with midase. which doubles the speed of digestion of plastic by microbes. Canadian-Iranian designer Roya Ariri, working scientists at the University of British Columbia, UBC, has invented a living biodegradable fabric named Biogarantry. Made from algae, the textile photosynthesizes, purifying the air around it. UBC claims it's the first living and photosynthesizing textile, and while prototypes like these are still in the early stages of research and design and far from mass production, they challenge the fashion industry to reimagine ways it can reduce its colossal carbon footprint through alternative fabrics. A study by the journal Nature finds the rate of melting of glaciers in Greenland threatens to exceed anything Greenland has experienced in the last 12,000 years. Over the last 2 decades, Greenland's ice sheet has melted at a rate of roughly 6 trillion tons per century, a rate approached only during a warm period that occurred between 7,000 and 10,000 years ago. Under a scenario where humans continue to raise concentrations of heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere, Greenland's ice loss could reach unprecedented levels, with almost 36 trillion tons of ice potentially lost by the end of this century. A Brazilian federal judge blocked a government attempt to revoke regulations that protect the country's tropical mangroves after the move was fiercely criticized by environmental and climate groups. Mangroves are trees which are rooted underwater in salty sediments, thriving in conditions few other plants can withstand. The root systems protect coasts from erosions, are home to numerous species of seabirds, and are considered nursery habitats because they provide a safe haven for young fish, crabs, and shrimp. Mangroves also absorb more carbon dioxide per area than rainforests. Environment Minister Ricardo Salles had said the proposed changes provided greater balance in order to protect the environment. However, the judge overturned the decision, saying the repeal violated the constitutional right to an ecologically balanced environment. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro rejected Joe Biden's offer of $20 billion to stop the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. The offer was made during Tuesday's presidential debate. Bolsonaro wrote that he, unlike the left-wing presidents of the past, does not accept bribes, criminal land demarcations, or cowardly threats toward our territorial and economic integrity, adding that Brazil's sovereignty was non-negotiable. During the climate section of the debate, Biden said the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down and are being ripped down, going on to say that he would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion to say, here's $20 billion, stop tearing down the forest, and if you don't, you're going to have significant economic consequences.
Thanks, Lamira. The Las Vegas Aces beat the Connecticut Sun 3-2 in their WNBA semifinal series. They will play the Seattle Storm for the championship. The Los Angeles Lakers took the first game of the NBA Finals series, beating the Miami Heat 116-98. A big thanks to Lemira for joining us on our podcast today. Again, you can check out her Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Lemira, Lemera. This is